I want to welcome everyone to our Gaining Ground webinar series. I want to add that this is being recorded and a copy will be emailed to everyone as well as a follow-up survey. So thank you for your participation. My name is Aaron Prater. I'm a graduate student in the K-State Horticulture Urban Food Systems program, and I will be your host today. The Gaining Ground webinars are so they're organized by our Urban Food Systems graduate student cohort, and the whole purpose of this series is to provide agriculture educators with tools and skills to better support urban food systems. And most of our topics will focus on the business aspects of running small farms. This program has been funded by a North Central SARE PDP grant and supported by Kansas State University Horticulture and Natural Resources Department and the Urban Food Systems program at K-State University. Today, we're going to be talking about value-added processing and production. And according to some studies, up to a third of all agricultural production intended for the food system ends up wasted. Finding ways to reduce the waste and increase profits and create opportunities to differentiate products in a crowded marketplace can be a daunting task. This webinar series is designed to help growers find the tools and resources to overcome these obstacles. So what is value-added? We're going to start with, we've got three farmers who are going to help us answer that question. Beth Robinette from Link Foods in Spokane, Washington, Tom Ruggieri from Fair Share Farms in Kearney, Missouri, and Jim Pierce of the Earth Farm and Distillery in Richmond. We're going to answer questions about what it is and how to get involved with it. So what is value added? Simply put, it's a process by which value is increased in a product through manufacturing, marketing, or processing means. Now, this has been a buzzword in corporate America for a long time, adding value to a product. But how do you do that? And what does that mean in terms of agriculture? Some easy examples are taking your fruits and turning them into jams or jellies, making dog treats out of products that you grow or raise. And then, it can be as wild as harvesting sorghum and then turning the cane into syrup and reducing that down and selling that as an additional product. So how does a farmer or producer get started in value-added production? There's a host of resources out there to help identify a product and even help formulate a recipe, or maybe you have a family recipe handed down through generations. Either way, you got to come up with an idea first. And that's the hard part. The easy part comes next because you don't have to do everything on your own. Extension offices provide a host of services to help you put ideas into production, and many value-added products can be created in your own home, right? So first, we've got to identify what we want to do and how we're going to get there. Next, you got to understand your liability. What are you on the hook for? Can you do this legally in your own home, or do you need additional resources? There's a host of cottage industry laws in a lot of states these days that will help you understand what you can do in your home without additional oversight. Some things you need extra permits for, and we'll talk about some of that today. It's going to require a little more oversight and health department inspections. And sometimes you need more facilities. Some things you can do at home, some things you need either to invest in additional facilities to achieve that goal, or you need to find an external resource to help you do that. So what are some of those resources? One of the great ways to get started is a value-added producer grant, and I think all of our panelists today can add a lot of value here in terms of answering what that grant process looks like and how to participate. You can look around your area communities for facilities. A lot of communities have kitchens available where you can go process your products for a small rental fee. Your extension office has a tremendous amount of resources, both in terms of publications or personal experience and knowledge that you can pull from to really help lower the barrier to entry. And then lastly, your community. And that's what we're going to do today, is we're going to ask some of the specialists that we know to help answer some of those questions. So if I could have you all help me in welcoming our panelists. We're going to start with Beth Robinette from Link Foods in Spokane. And I'm going to stop my share and let Beth introduce herself and her farm.
Hi. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Um, like Aaron said, I'm from Spokane, Washington, which is Eastern Washington. Notice a lot of you guys are from the Midwest. So if you're not familiar with our part of the world, um, you might think of like Seattle, which is, the biggest city in Washington. There's a big mountain range that goes down the middle of Washington State, and we live on the other side of that. So it's actually very, very different kind of climate, 15 to 17 inches of precipitation, but really a tremendous, tremendous ag kind of area, incredibly productive soils, great water. It's a cool place to be into food, I guess. Um, and my family, oh, this is my cat Deborah. You probably see her ears poking in and out of the call a couple times. Um, I'm a fourth generation cattle rancher. My family raises grass-fed beef. I manage that operation with my dad. It's called the Lazy R Ranch, lazyrbeef.com if you want to check out the website. But I'm really kind of here today to talk about my other project, which is a company I was the co-founder of called Link Foods, or I guess I'm still with company. Link Foods, which is a worker and farmer-owned cooperative food hub based in Spokane. So we started the company with the aim of really trying to help small farmers connect to institutional scale markets. So we were primarily a wholesale business, but in the wake of COVID, we've kind of made this pivot to really be focused on direct to consumer offerings. So we do a multi-farm CSA box. We source from about 60 farms in the region, and then we do this really nice curated CSA box with tons of add-ons. And we also have an a la carte online market. So it's kind of a little bit of a different take to value add than making fruit into jelly, but it's we are kind of through our sourcing network and the way we're able to integrate so many different farms products together, creating a value added product. The other thing that our company does, sorry, this cat is driving me nuts. She was so good at leaving me alone until this call started. It's like she can sense it. The kind of other line of business that the co-op is in is that we make craft malt. So we live in a tremendous grain growing region. We're kind of at the north end of the Palouse Hills, which is one of the bread baskets of this country. And so we grow a lot of cereal grains here. And that was one piece of the food system that we as a co-op were kind of having a hard time integrating with because it happens on such a large commodity scale. But we have a huge craft brewing scene in the north, or in the Northwest in general. And so we wanted to find a way to kind of relocalize the supply chain around that product. So we got a value added producers grant that supports our craft malting operation. We've gotten a few other USDA grants as well that have supported the company over the years. So I guess that's all I'll say about that. And if anyone has any questions, we can circle back. And I'm going to try and do something with my cat in the meantime. Sorry.
No worries. Thanks, Beth. I appreciate it. And we will do Q&A at the end of this with questions going into the Q&A box on the bottom. Tom, tell us about Fair Share Farm and your involvement with value added.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for having me. Just want to take a few minutes here and kind of run through our value added products. So Fair Share Farm, we're in Kearney, Missouri, which is just north of Kansas City. There we go. So this is Rebecca Graff and myself. So we're Rebecca's fourth generation of her family to farm this land. So this is our, we're farming the area in the bottom half there. So last year we put in over 7,000 linear feet of berms and swales to remanage our land. We grow vegetables, a little bit of fruit. We got chickens, and then the rest of the land is native grasses that's harvested, combined for seed. So we've been farming for, this is our 19th year. It's our 18th CSA season. That's the main thing that we've been doing over the years. few years back, though, we started to look at some alternatives. We kind of did from the start. We were always interested in value added, but I didn't really want to boil water and make tomato sauce for people. So we kind of ended up settling in on vegetable fermentation. One thing that's nice about it is a little bit of an alternative model, which is something I want to talk about. The idea is to kind of reduce the physical demands on the farmer over time, so we're not just hoeing all day long. It helps diversify our business model. The live culture, what we really felt why we got into that is that it really is in sync with our focus on soil health. Another thing that's interesting is that it's really a low energy demand. It's all at room temperature. We like to say we have a kitchen without a stove, which has a lot of benefits as far as capital, lots of other things. And it fits well with our CSA model, and that with the CSA, we have kind of a captive audience. So with our value-added product, it's different than anything else on the market, certainly around here. And I want to kind of talk about, value, like, what do you mean by value? And these are the things we feel that we add value to our product. We raise the ingredients. We're focused on the microbiome and on soil organic matter, a lot more biodiversity in our field. Seed to jar. We start from the seed and raise all our crops. And it's all handcrafted and it tastes good. So as far as raising the ingredients, we like to tell people, you are what you eat, so you are what your plants eat. So that's why we focus on biological, regenerative type farming. We like to say the soil is the gut of the plant. It's really the same as humans, in that food's digested by these microorganisms and they release nutrients, and then either the plant or humans, that's where we get our nutrition. If you're familiar with the whole rhizosphere, this is a really good image showing a root hair. And you'll notice how there's this biofilm around the root hair, and that's the exudates. And that's really, it's on that margin where all the nutrition flows. You have the fungi that can bring things in from farther away, and then you have all the bacteria around the root hair, and there's kind of a swap there. It's this co-evolved symbiosis. And the more we work on this, we knew this is what we were focused on, but it was interesting when we found this slide, how it shows that it's really all the same thing. So this is the human digestive system. And most people now know what, human microbiome is considered the probiotic life in our digestive system. You can see it's the same thing. There's this biofilm really on top of your, your colon, your intestines, and that's where you want this life to flourish. And that helps to get the transfer of nutrients out of your food. There's really the inside of our digestive system is really our outside, because it's just a passage that runs through our body. And so you can kind of see it's all the same. So we make sure we feed our soil a pretty healthy and diverse diet, a lot of cover crops, hay mulch, compost, minerals, animal rotations. And, we try to point out to people too, that if you are what your plants eat, the chemical-based farming approach means that you're eating these synthetic chemicals. That's fundamentally what's in the food chain. So like that cucumber in the store isn't really all natural because it was fed in an artificial system. And you can't really compare these two things. So we're trying to talk about our methods. The value is that it's not synthetic at all. And they're really not comparable. You cannot compare them. We promote a lot of biodiversity on our farm. It's another value that we add. If you go for like a value-added producer grant, converting, transitioning to organic is actually something that you can consider it as a value added. We've done a lot of soil sampling over our time at the farm over these 18 years, and this graph shows how we've increased the organic matter in our soil, and that represents storing carbon in the ground and sequestering it. And that's obviously a value. We used to have a little sticker on the top of our jar that said carbon was sequestered making this product. And we feel this is we can say that. This graph shows that that's legitimate. And you have to ask how many other products that you ever buy can say that that value is in it. So we feel that's really important. The seed to jar, we select the varieties of cucumbers and Napa cabbage and all sorts of things that we grow for our ferments. So our recipe is really, the fermenting is the easy part. The hard part of our recipe is raising the ingredients. Once we're in the kitchen, our kitchen is, we had to write a HACCP plan, hazard assessment, critical control point. The health department really wasn't familiar with the fact that you could have a bucket of vegetables sitting out at room temperature for 3 weeks. That's kind of a no-no. But luckily the state health department kind of set them straight that that's fine. And we had to write a HACCP plan to be able to do the fermenting in our certified kitchen. I guess in Kansas, you don't have to do that, but here in Missouri, you do. It was actually a positive thing. And a small batch. So we do our fermenting in 5 and 7 gallon buckets. You can get about 50 pounds in a 7 gallon bucket. So it took us a while to determine, kind of the best way to do things. Obviously it's, one reason we make it is for, food, to have it be a delicious food. And so it's always nice to see somebody post using our product online. Another thing with value, when we first started this, and even still the case, there really aren't any comparables. Nobody else was really doing this. So it's like, how do we even describe ourselves? We don't want to be put on the same, level as jelly, and jam, where you're adding a lot of sugar and the likes. And it became clear after a while that really what we were doing was a craft. It wasn't an art. We didn't invent kimchi or jalapeno and escabeche. Those recipes, those are traditional recipes. We make a point of expressing that, but it's more a craft where we're trying to perfect this product. And this is what our product looks like. We sell them pretty much in 16-ounce jars. We pack a full pound of that into those jars where we can. We also sell in buckets. So that's a gallon bucket. It'll hold 8 pounds. And we can sell that more at a bulk rate. We're not buying 8 jars and 8 labels and paying somebody time to pack those things. So we can pass some of those labor and material savings on to our customers. Our value-added producer grant helped pay for the jars and labels and some of our labor. And so just some final thoughts on this, that craft ferments, really, they're similar to a winery or a dairy. That's really kind of what you need to relate them to. It's, you're a farm or agricultural producer. You produce something on your site, on your farm. You ferment it on your farm, preserve it, and it's an example of the quality of your soil and your farming. And for us, over 95% of the ingredients in every one of our products comes from our farm. So they really do represent just our farm. If you're doing anything value added, you have to be, doing traditional recipes. You want to make sure you don't, appropriate somebody else's culture when you're doing that. Not that you can't use or produce those products. Kitchen without a stove. The actual live culture in the jar, it's a wild fermentation. So the life in our soil is actually in the jar. We feel that's a value. And then kind of the last thing is that we've been advocating for more people to do this. And so I think it's great that we have a chance to talk to folks all around the area and the country, because I'm not sure why this hasn't really been done in the past. It's similar to wineries or dairies. And I think it's something that there should be more of. That's it.
Thanks, Tom. I really appreciate it. Jim, tell us about Of the Earth Farm.
So this started, I guess, 30 years ago with radishes. I looked around at the resources I had.
Jim, can you turn your camera on, please?
I can try.
Thank you.
Looked around at the resources I had, and my personal interests were growing vegetables, had a little land, and radishes had a 30-day, 45-day turnaround, and I could start growing them. Then what do you do with that? And what's happened over time is look for opportunities to add value, which is what do people want but don't want to do that you're also interested in doing. Fast forward to about 10 years ago, realized we had apples and that distilling had opened up in the United States. And that was one way to add value to our apples. They're worth 16 cents as a juice apple, a little over $1 at the farmer's market fresh, where I can turn 15 pounds of apples into $54 in the form of apple brandy in a little time. So it's been a group effort. There's my mom, dad, and Sarah have all been working on it. It's been a response to, then given that we've been doing this 10 years, it's a response to customer input, because I think I made the mistake at the beginning of doing what I like to do and not paying enough attention to what people were wanting or listening to them. So yeah, we've partnered with other local farms, blackberries, raspberries. I even have a friend from Guatemala, so we get coffee beans from their 15-hectare farm down there along in January. It was also a way to increase our gross income for a limited acreage. Right now we're up to 25 acres, but only about 5 acres in apple trees. And as a result of the distilling, there was another opportunity. I had this high protein mash coming off the still warm, no energy, and it had a little bit in the way of nutrition. So we started raising hogs and tested the market, I guess you could say. And we sell pork now and also lamb. Yeah, that's short and sweet. I have used the USDA VAPG. We've used SARE. We've used the Missouri Department of Ag financing and grants. That's actually what started us down the path, was the ability to leverage for every dollar, they matched us $5.50 to explore whether or not this could even be done feasible, whether the laws were actually what I thought they were, and then, to help develop recipes and begin that first equipment purchase. They also helped us with the latest tasting room right here in a renovation, a little bit more equipment, and helped us scale up a little bit. The SARE grants helped with some ideas to add value to these other waste products. We still have one here we're not using, that'd be heat and steam. Yeah, I've also used the SBA, SCORE, Extension, anybody that'll listen. And I'm a little slow to pick up when people are bored or don't want to hear it. So I just keep talking, but I'm constantly looking for feedback or new ideas too. I guess the latest thing too is adding value to the pork in the form of cured products. I was just telling Aaron, I just opened my first prosciutto, sliced it, and then, yeah, it was delicious. I think that was just beginner's luck though.
That's great, Jim. Thanks so much. We're going to move to Q&A real quick, but before that, we've just got a short 2-question poll that we're going to put up for everybody. So while that poll's being done, what we're going to do is we're going to start soliciting questions from the audience, and if you'll put those questions in the Q&A box, we will start getting to them, and we'll put them to the panel of experts here.
I would add that we're also carrying Fair Share's kimchi and serve it on our charcuterie platter. That's another thing that to consider the philosophy of our company, which is kind of the evolution of my thoughts, is working with a lot of small growers, and local. But since I've started thinking more broadly about the globe and how to connect with other people, because we're not just local. I mean, it's an important part of our local economy, but we also have to remember the rest of the world.
Yeah, that's a really important point, Jim. Thanks for bringing that up. I do have one question here from Rachel right now for Tom. Tom, how did you justify the organic and soil health value add to the value added producer grant? It seems most oriented to marketing value.
Well, I'd have to go back and kind of look at how we phrased it, but I think one thing they had a round one, and when we got it, and we were the only ones in the state picked at that point. I think one thing was just the nature of the our process was kind of novel, probably, and that regardless probably had some impact on helping us with our selection.
Okay. Jim, we got a question for you. Could you talk some more about your markets? You sell retail, wholesale, local, mail order. Where do you sell, and how can people buy that?
So we sell at the farmers market. It just kind of made sense because we'd already been selling there and had a reputation at the market and kind of understood that market. So we sell direct to consumer at the market here at the farm now. We also have a square store. We do Tuesday deliveries. Because of the law, we're not technically supposed to ship it, although I do see some go out in a box. I don't know what's happening to it. There is an effort to change the law, so we'll be in tune with that. We also work with a wholesaler, and I must say we are, I guess, almost micro distillery. We're under 500 cases a year, but it's part of that. I have had diversify blown at me since I was a kid. And so we have several different markets, several different products. It also could be a result of adult onset attention deficit disorder, but that's part of what helps us get through. Like this last year, Harlene pork, but our spirit sales went up. Some of them didn't, some of them went down, which could be some other things going on there. Yeah, that's our markets. And the reason I chose to call it farm distillery is you can communicate a whole lot real quick. We're growing not all of the apples now, but I wanted to be able to do stuff with raw materials in Missouri and beyond now. But yeah, so I'm appealing to the same customer I was at the farmer's market. They want a little bit of a romantic relationship with somebody that farms. They don't want to hear about what you were doing in the hog lot the day before. But the good parts about the bacon you ate for breakfast,
right?
Or the apple brandy you sipped that evening in front of the fire.
That's great. Thank you. Anna asked all of you, can you talk about the impact COVID-19 has had on your businesses? And can you speak about how you've had to pivot and has that impacted your sales? And do you anticipate a rebound once we make it through all this? And I'll let you one by one go through that. Let's start with Beth.
Yeah, it was very disruptive. Because Link was so focused on kind of this farm to institution channel, March of 2020 was not a great time to have your main customers to be restaurants and institutions of higher learning. We basically had 80% of our sales stopped in 1 week. We knew a couple weeks ahead of time that, you know, things were going to get locked down. And so we were not, it wasn't like a complete shock, but it was a very abrupt, like the faucet turned off, which was okay for March. I'm glad it happened at that time of year. But we were also like staring down the barrel of a growing season with all of these farmers whose product we had no idea where we were going to move. And, you know, we didn't want our farmers, like you could see in Florida already, like farmers were dumping crops and just all kinds of crazy stuff happening when all those supply chains just come to a halt. So yeah, we basically, it was kind of a blessing in disguise though, because the honest truth was that our wholesale business had never been profitable. Like we had just kept hoping we would reach a scale that would make the numbers work, and they just weren't working. And when COVID happened, we had to take a really hard look at our finances and say like, okay, we can only afford to do stuff that makes money right now. And our Linkbox, our farm multi-farm CSA program, had actually always been profitable as a business line, but we had always treated it as this kind of like overflow outlet for stuff that we couldn't move to our main customers. So we, and then of course, like everybody was having these experiences of going to the grocery store and not being able to buy the stuff that they want. And then people are like panicking. And that really drove an interest in local food that I hope is more than just a apocalypse trend, but actually kind of sticks around. So we saw our, you know, I think the previous year, 2019, our Linkbox was, we were sending out about 200 boxes a week. That pretty much doubled last year, and our goal is to double it again this year. And I think that's pretty achievable. Because that was without us really doing any marketing or advertising beyond like, you know, getting a write-up in the local paper. So I think what it helped us discover, sorry, this is a long-winded answer, but what it really helped us discover was like building our business around something that was financially viable. And so I think the company is going to come out of COVID in a much better position than we're going in actually. And then maybe we can start to reapproach that wholesale market in a little more intentional way when we have a little more money to play with.
Yeah, that's interesting. Tom.
Yeah, well, the ferment sales went up kind of at a rate we were hoping kind of at the beginning of the year. You know, we're only trying to sell as part of this grant 6,000 jars a year in a area with 2 million people in it. And so we've gone like from 2 to 3. We're over 4 last year. So it was growth. Our CSA, like I said, that's a captive audience. So we're able to sell to them. Didn't really sell to restaurants much. We went to farmers market, and that was a little slow and difficult to get going. Our biggest impact really was with our CSA. Ours is a participatory CSA, so members couldn't come out and help harvest. That we had to like do all the work ourselves. And Rebecca had to go to distribution. We have our members who would normally run distribution. We would just drop off the produce. We couldn't do that, so it took a lot of time from our CSA.
Jim, how did it affect your operation?
It did hurt sales to begin with. It was slow to start. Turns out though, in the end, we were just about where we were the year before, because we pivoted with home deliveries, cocktail kits. We figured out how to have people out here outside. We lost the tourist trade a lot through the city market. There was a lot of tourists that would buy. So in the end, though, we ended up about the same. What did really help It gave us some time to look harder at the cost. So some things changed. Some of our suppliers and services we changed after trying to cut cost. But then with a lot of the financial assistance for businesses, that also gave us an extra month, January and February, to rethink what we're doing and maybe work on a 2-year plan that's going to move us forward.
That's awesome. Beth, I got a question for you. Can you talk more about the geographic spread of the customers of your CSA?
Yeah, so we have drop sites around the city of Spokane, and then Coeur d'Alene is in North Idaho, but it's just about half an hour from Spokane. So we have one drop site on the Idaho side as well. Yeah, but it's we used to distribute down to Pullman, which is an hour and a half away. When we were doing wholesale, we've really shrunk our footprint down, which is again part of like just our cost saving measures and only doing stuff that makes money.
Right. And this is a question from Tricia, and I actually had the same question myself. Do your grain growers and the co-op see improved profits through the malting process?
Yeah, we can actually pay about double commodity prices for our malt. So farmers are happy.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then also, could you share about the business structure of a worker and farmer-owned cooperative food hub, Beth?
Yeah, I will try to keep it concise. This is one of the things about Link that I think is really special, though, is that we are a for-profit business, but the ownership is split between the employees that run the distribution and do the sales and all of that kind of stuff, and the farmers that sell products through the company. So it's in terms of how it's written in our bylaws, it's like a 50-50 ownership split between the workers and the farmers. And then our governance is kind of overseen by a board of directors that's made up of both employees and farmer representatives that are elected by the general membership every year. And then eventually when our company's profitable, there will be some profit sharing between all of us as well. But we haven't quite gotten to that yet.
So here's another one for all of you. Can any of you speak to the value-added grant process? It sounds like you've all used it, but has it been effective for you? Is it something you'd recommend? And where do people start with that process? Anybody want to jump in?
Yeah, I think it's been really helpful. You know, one thing, like you said at the beginning, it's like, okay, what are you going to do? What is your value-added product going to be? Just filling out the application alone is an exercise in what are you trying to do? What are your goals? You know, that type of thing. So you're kind of writing a small business plan and putting the road in front of you. And some of what they pay for, it's pretty straightforward. You know, they help with your marketing, you know, with, you know, advertising materials, website, labor, you know, consumables. And so it's just really, really helpful. It's like a Kickstarter, you know, grant, really. It's not even a loan.
Awesome. Would you concur, Beth and Jim?
Yeah, there are some limitations in how you can spend the money. So that's something to explore. Like, it's not like they just give you a check for $200,000 or whatever. You can't spend it on capital expenditures. I think you have to spend it on like rent and utilities and product that you're actually buying and things like that. I think you also have to provide a match. Your local extension folks should be able to point you in the right direction for what you need to do to qualify. But yeah, we've also gotten a specialty crop block. We've gotten a couple specialty crop block grants. And all of those have been really helpful in terms of helping us basically subsidizing the cost of adding staffing so that we can kind of do the supply chain building that needs to happen to actually make the business fly. So they've been super, super invaluable for our development.
And a follow-up to that is, do you see yourself producing crops differently for value added products? Are you taking what you would normally have done and just turn it into value added, or now you growing specific things for the value added process? And that's to all of you.
I'll just speak
Sure.
quickly on behalf of our farmers, I guess. It's kind of both. I think we have some grain farmers that are really interested in doing like niche ancient varieties, and there's lots of like sustainability related advantages to those old varieties of grain, but you really have to have a specialty market to be able to grow those things, because you also often have like a lower yield. And there's also more, I guess, kind of conventional farmers that really want to be part of more of a regional market, or see the value in not just exporting all of their goods to some customer they never get to touch. Like it's really kind of heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time to see like some farmer that literally has never tasted the product that they grow before, like get to drink a beer made with barley that they grew on their farm. It's really kind of special. So I'm glad we're getting to kind of recapture that a little more.
That's really cool. Tom, you look like you had something to say to that.
Yeah, with our product, I mean, that's really kind of the focus of it. We want to express the kind of flavor that can come out of Missouri soils. So we focus on the things that we can grow the best, and that's what we make our ferments out of. We don't try and, we don't bring things in to make something that isn't really available locally. And then once you start doing that, what's the best variety, or, oh, can I work, elderberries into this or whatever. So it definitely gets you thinking.
I'd say a couple of things about the VAPG. We were existing, so the grant helped us promote. It's not just to get it started. The other thing would be to think of, this did not occur to me till we went through the value added producer grant. You've got lots of different costs that are involved, and it's going to cover its set, which displaces the money you'd spend on that to save and use on other things. So you're leveraging too. Again, all these grants and so far I got $1, I might leverage it to $5, or I might leverage it to $20 and just be able to have that much more impact on the growth of our business.
That's really exciting. There's a question here about prepackaged meals and frozen meals. And so I'll just read the question. In New York, I created freezer meal kits for soup, stir fries with a NESARE grant. Each food was separately frozen and vacuum packed for a kit. Can this process be done in inspected kitchens in your states? I ask this because a retired teacher has training materials to share. We have an answer in the question. My understanding is that in Kansas, Missouri, this is allowed when done under inspection. Vacuum packaging does normally require some additional steps, such as having a documented HACCP plan, but it is allowable under inspection. And that just makes me want to kind of follow up and say, how much regulatory hurdles did you guys run into in these operations? Was it pretty easy? Did you have the resources to overcome these fairly easily, or is it still always a work in process? I know, Jim, with liquor, it's always a little bit trickier.
Well, I'm not that bright, and I managed to navigate it. So without help, but it was a lot of reading, and for me, it takes some time to absorb something from an industry I know nothing about to begin with, but it can be done. And from start to permitting, I think it took me around 6 months, but I had to spend a certain amount of time learning what I needed to do. I don't feel like it was that difficult. And they are hurdles. Maybe better to think about them as challenges, because regulations are usually a response to a previous bad experience. So it's about protecting you and the consumer. And I'm not interested in trying to skirt regulations. More, I'm interested in understanding why they're there and then avoiding the risk.
Sure. And Tom, I mean, I know fermenting is essentially controlled rotting, and the health department doesn't always love that sort of thing. So, and you said you had to get a HACCP plan and work through that process. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah, it was a little more difficult. So we're in Clay County, Missouri, and the health department there was a bit skeptical and dubious about the whole thing. Originally, they wanted us to say, oh, well, you can only sell it for 7 days and treat it like, packaged food. And, I knew that wasn't the case. I mean, I'm lucky. I was an environmental engineer for 20 years. I'd written plans and things like that. So I had to take a online class to become a HACCP plan, certified HACCP plan writer. So I did that, and you go through that whole thing, and they never once talk about fermenting. So I mean, even after that, I had to come up with the HACCP plan. The first step is like a little literature review. It's like, what's the hazard? And go through and look at CDC. It's like nobody's ever died from fermented vegetables going bad, and so you make your case. So it did take a little bit of time, but like I said, when we were done, we have production logs and record keeping, and it's a nice training manual for anybody that comes into the kitchen to work. So it's really a very valuable thing. Whereas in Kansas, it's my understanding, all you have to do with the fermented vegetables is document that the pH was below 4.6 before you package it. So, 2 different states and 2 very different regulatory requirements.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You always have to see what your local authority requires, because it's a little bit different everywhere. Beth, are there any special requirements for malting grain? I'm a little familiar with that process, but
yeah, it's pretty. There are some. We're inspected by the FDA for that, but it's not a real difficult process. It's not nearly as comprehensive as our food safety plan, which is we're GAP certified, but that's a voluntary certification. We have definitely tried to take a proactive stance on our food safety stuff, though, just because every indication to me says that the regulatory environment will become more restrictive over time. And I personally think a lot of that is really silly and unnecessary, but that just seems to be the way of the world. So we want to make sure that our farmers are really prepared that if they're ever legally required to have a food safety plan, or if they cross that FSMA threshold where they're a large enough scale where they don't have a qualified exemption, that we kind of have all of the resources in place for them to be able to achieve those certifications, because most of them are just about having the right paperwork in a clipboard.
Right. Jim, you look
It's not
like
super complicated, but it can kind of make you go crazy if you're not partial to paperwork, which a lot of people aren't.
Jim, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I would say that I didn't think the regulations were that big a deal, but it does seem like, since we're considered a luxury good, every bureaucracy that can claim a fee wants something of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that actually brings up our next question really well. Do you evaluate whether to invest value-added enterprises that don't already exist in your marketplace, like the charcuterie or the ferments? How did you guys come up? What made you think this is what we need to do?
Well, with me, that's one reason why I wanted to kind of have a little slideshow there, to really show that really the value in our product really reflects what Rebecca and I value in life. And so that's the direction we want to head. And, the food system, most people tell you is pretty broken, and you have to come up with your own ways, new ways of doing things. And it's going to take time, and it is new, but it was definitely the path we wanted to go, and hopefully it'll pan out. And, I'd like to see, like I said, I'm advocating for more local ferments made from local products, because I think that's something our food culture really lacks, and it's a positive thing. And for us, we're kind of the only craft vegetable ferment. We'd rather have it like craft beer, where people that we have more competition, or at least there's a group people doing it. It would help everybody.
Sure. Jim, you want to?
How do you decide whether to invest? So I have two things to say about that. The first would be not how I did it. So I was at a workshop and they were talking about spirits, and the guy had a sample of a Montmorency Cherry Eau de Vie. It was like life-changing. But so I did it. I pursued it because like there's an opportunity to add value to our apples and things that people don't know. But with that comes a lot of challenges if they don't know it. So the charcuterie is the same way. I want our farm to go after the maximum, the highest premium product that I can make here. So the charcuterie was a nice complement, first of all, to the original product of apple brandy. So it's kind of based on my interest. And that's why I say that's one. Two, I've started working with an SBA counselor, and she asked really good questions. And in hindsight, I would not go about it the same way. You need a personal interest, so you're invested, but test the market small and get feedback, lots of feedback, and define it as well as you can before you start investing the money. Which we sort of did, I guess, with our first grant, in that used an economist from Springfield, MSU, and he did a kind of a crude look at what the market was for spirits. So you had some idea, but spend some time trying to understand people and their consumption behavior, and trends and all that play a part.
Beth, do you have anything to add to that assessment, or is it pretty spot on?
Yeah, I would say it's like finding the intersection of what you want to do and what you're good at and what people want to buy. What we always tell farmers or anyone who wants to work with us, because we do carry other value added products as well, is just like, do what you're good at. Like if you are great at growing salad greens, then bring me salad greens. And like a high quality product that is delicious, you can always find a way to sell that.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good point. And this brings up another question for me. I know that Jim, you and Tom have known each other for a while, and kind of travel your farms are in a similar area and travel in a similar circle. How important is the community of farmers and growers and producers in working on some of this stuff? How much do you lean on the knowledge of the people around you?
So yeah, our products are built on those other growers. And I know I said earlier, I talk about my ideas because it's a way to test them with the people I'm around. And because I've been in the farmer's market since like 92 or 3 or something, you just know everybody there, and it's a way to get feedback. It broadens the input that you can get. I can only go so far, but you can test these ideas with somebody else and they've seen something else and bring all that in. So yeah, I think it's important, even though I'm antisocial and maybe a hermit, but I see the value.
Yeah, I think you can tell listening to Jim, it's real good to have somebody with that type of knowledge and support and curiosity. And so it just helps to have fellow producers like that. And he didn't mention it, but he been thinking about charcuterie, because I used to make homemade Finocchiana, and he tasted it, and then that was another thing that helped him decide that charcuterie is something that he should work on.
Nice. And Beth, you're clearly surrounded by a whole group of people interested in this. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I love the little like community moments that are created by just like at the farmers market, we have intake days at the warehouse, and our farmers will cross paths, and it's just cool to see people talking about like, oh, like your beets look really great. How do you get them so evenly sized? And just the communication and like the camaraderie. I think there are times when you can sense that people get a little like guarded, or it's like, oh, I don't want to have more competition, and like that guy's growing what I'm growing, um and that's totally understandable. But I think like time and time again, we've just been able to show that that like a rising tide lifts all boats, like the more that farmers collaborate together and support each other, the more we kind of elevate our whole food system. Um, yeah, so I'm just super, super grateful for that. And I think it's very important. And the one thing I wanted to say, Jim, you mentioned kind of the global aspect of that is we've also been creating relationships with other networks of farmers. So we're working with Puget Sound Food Hub out of Seattle and Western Montana Growers Co-op out of Missoula. So we really have now this network of small farms that reaches all the way from Seattle into central Montana. And we have, we're kind of working on creating a distribution network where we can move product all across that. Because when I'm sold out of something, the next best place is like from the next closest, awesome farm that we can access product from. So just networking people together like that, I think is really, really cool.
That's a really good point. Thank you. We've sort of reached the end of our hour, and I know everybody's time is valuable. So if there are any questions that we didn't get to, we'll try and get those to our panelists and see if we can answer it for you. I want to say thanks to everybody who participated, all the panelists, Beth, Jim, Tom, thank you so much, and all the K-State students who helped organize all of this. It's been fantastic. We're going to follow this up. You'll get an email with a recording of this webinar and a follow-up survey, and be on the lookout for our next webinar in the series. So thank you, everybody. Thank the three of you for participating. I really appreciate it. It was super informative. Really glad to have spent this time with you.
And I'd say I wish everybody well.
Yeah, please stay safe. Yeah. And I think that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one.